President Trump has just arrived in Vietnam for his second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un. There you see Air Force One on the ground in Hanoi, where the two leaders will sit down for the first time since their historic meeting that was in Singapore 8 months ago.
Now you can see it's nighttime there in Hanoi, just about after 9 p.m. And we're going to see a big welcoming ceremony for the president who left Washington 21 hours ago. Major Garrett says that the president's going to spend just as much time traveling to Vietnam as he will in Vietnam, traveling to the other side of the world for this historic summit.
And our Ben Tracy greets the president there. He's in Hanoi, Vietnam's capital, where the North Korean dictator arrived earlier today. So, Ben, when will the two leaders actually meet for the first time?
We are told by the White House that that meeting will actually take place tomorrow, that President Trump is going to have meetings with Vietnamese officials here in Hanoi, and then he and Kim Jong Un will actually meet for dinner. Now, the official summit itself, the face-to-face official meetings, that will take place the next day on Thursday local time here. But you see them, literally rolling out the red carpet for the president there. That's a scene that played out here in Hanoi earlier today when Kim Jong Un arrived. He arrived, however, on a green train, not on Air Force One. But he was given quite a welcome ceremony here as well.
Ben, obviously the North Korean dictator would like sanctions lifted. What is it that the U.S. side is hoping to get out of this meeting?
It seems the U.S. side wants some sort of concrete step towards denuclearization. But we have seen in the last couple of days President Trump really downplaying the expectations here. He has gone out of his way to say that he is not in a rush. He's not trying to rush Kim Jong Un into denuclearization. And we have seen Secretary Pompeo say that he thinks this is going to be a long process, a process that might take even further summits. That is quite a change from when they left the Singapore summit and there was this expectation on the U.S. side that North Korea was suddenly going to start getting rid of its nuclear weapons. I think there is now an acknowledgement that very little, if anything, has happened since the Singapore summit in terms of North Korea actually taking steps to denuclearize. Administration officials have said that one goal of this summit is to simply define what that term means, because it has become apparently clear that the U.S. and North Korea do not agree on what the term denuclearization means.
Ben, have you heard who's traveling with the president on this trip?
Say that again, Gil.
Have you heard who is traveling with the president on this trip?
We do know that Secretary Pompeo is traveling with him. We were told that National Security Advisor John Bolton was not going to be on this trip, that he was staying back in Washington because of the events in Venezuela. It appears that he is now here in Hanoi, so he apparently has made the trip as well.
The National Security Advisor John Bolton, of course, quite a hardliner when it comes to North Korea. We have heard intelligence assessments from those in the U.S. government that say that they are observing activity in North Korea that is inconsistent with full denuclearization. What concrete steps do you expect the U.S. to offer the North Koreans in order to agree to this definition about what is denuclearization?
Well, one of the thoughts was that after the Singapore summit, the first step North Korea would take was to make a declaration, to basically say, here are all the weapons we have, and this is where they are. That is considered one of the first main steps towards denuclearization. That was also widely considered something North Korea had to do as the price of entry for a second summit. They have not done that. And in fact, North Korea has kind of scoffed at the idea of saying, why would we tell you where all of our stuff is? North Korea wants security assurances from the U.S. They certainly want some sort of sanctions relief. The real question is what is the U.S. willing to do, and what will North Korea give in return? It is clear that Kim Jong Un is not going to leave this summit basically saying, I'm going to give it all up. I just don't think that's on the table here. The question is, are they going to try to say we will continue our freeze on missile launches and nuclear tests, which is something that President Trump has said that he very much wants. He has said that he's happy as long as there's no more testing. But keep in mind that Kim Jong Un himself, before the Singapore summit, said the reason he's not testing his missiles anymore is because he doesn't have to. He feels like he has completed his program and that he's at a point where he no longer has to do those tests. So there is a disconnect here about what some of the symbolism of those tests actually mean and whether or not that is a significant concession on North Korea's part.
Well, and one of the pieces of symbolism also is obviously Kim Jong Un, and we see the president there waving from the stairs on Air Force One as he prepares to be greeted by this arrival ceremony. One of the One of the symbols that Kim Jong Un benefits from is parity with the world superpower, the United States. Ben, last time Kim Jong Un took a bit of a walkabout in Singapore. What has he done, or what is he preparing there to do on his own in the city?
Well, you know, you mentioned the symbolism of that. I mean, when Kim Jong Un arrived here today, it really was a hero's welcome. He walked off his green train. He was waving to the crowd. He was smiling. He then got in his armored Mercedes. He actually rolled down the window and was waving to the crowd as he drove away. So you think of Kim Jong Un was an international pariah just a couple of months ago, and now he is being greeted in countries as a respected world leader. That is something that he has gotten simply by participating in these summits, and so far he's given up nothing in return. So far today, he did arrive at his hotel. He then made a quick visit to the North Korean embassy here in Hanoi. We do believe there is some speculation that tomorrow he's actually going to go visit some factories. But, you know, with Kim Jong Un, you never know. When we were in Singapore, nobody expected him to show up on the rooftop of the Marina Bay Sands, checking out the pool and the bar. So who knows where Kim Jong Un will end up while he's here in Hanoi.
We're showing the split screen now, Ben, of President Trump's arrival on Air Force One, one of the most spectacular pieces of machinery in the world. And then Kim Jong Un of North Korea, really almost unable to fly to Hanoi since they don't have their own fleet of planes. In the last summit, he took a Chinese airplane. And this year, in his green train, a 60-plus hour train ride all the way through China and then getting off at the Vietnamese border. I know you've traveled to North Korea many times, Ben. Describe that. I mean, the details of him bringing his own forks and utensils and plates. Just how weary are they, or worried about, rather, of security?
Yeah, they come very prepared. We are told by a bellman at the hotel that Kim Jong Un is staying in that they have brought all of his food. They have brought his forks, his knives, all the cooking supplies. Yes, they want to control everything. So part of taking that train ride is a bit of that. It's to control the journey here. But also part of it is the symbolism of that. You know, you mentioned that when he showed up in Singapore, it wasn't one of North Korea's planes. He had to borrow a plane from China. That is not something North Korea wants to continue to broadcast to the world, that they are reliant on really their one main friend, which is China. So he showed up on his own train. Certainly that was a long journey, 60 hours on that train, and he'll take that train all the way back to North Korea, is what we understand.
And Ben, we're covering a bilateral meeting, but obviously a lot of other players have a lot at stake here, specifically China. You spent a lot of time in China. Talk about the role that China and President Xi have played leading up to this important meeting.
It's been a big role. You know, we've seen now since that first summit, and even before that, Kim Jong Un has now visited China several times to meet with Xi Jinping. It is interesting that so far Xi Jinping has not returned the favor. He has not been to Pyongyang. But it is true that Kim Jong Un, before these summits, wants to show the world, and mainly wants to show the U.S., that China has his back. China, on the other hand, though, has kind of played this deftly. They have enforced these sanctions against North Korea. They've gone along with the U.S. pressure to have these very strong international sanctions that many people believe has brought North Korea to the table. There is some evidence that China is starting to go easy on those sanctions, and that is something that the U.S. will want to keep track of. But no, before these summits, this seems to be a pattern now, where Kim Jong Un goes to Beijing, he meets with Xi Jinping. There's a lot of pictures of them together. Then he comes to the summit, and then he usually goes back to China not too long after and gives Xi Jinping an updated person. So we might see Kim Jong Un back in China very soon.
Well, he spent 2 days driving through the countryside there as well on his way to Vietnam. We will be covering this throughout the day. Ben, thank you so much. And as we mentioned, coverage will continue throughout the day and on your local news station, on the CBS station, and on our 24-hour streaming network, CBSN.
Jeff Glor is also in Hanoi. He will be anchoring the CBS Evening News from there tonight. Many of you will now return to CBS This Morning.
This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Nora O'Donnell with John Dickerson, Gail King, and Bianna Goladriga. CBS News, New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to CBSNews.com.